Welcome to the Free Truth Show on tnsradio.ning.com and on Ustream TV Free Truth. My name is Patrick Lynch. I'll be your host this evening, and we're going to have a guest, Piers Corbyn. Piers Corbyn is an astrophysicist and is an outspoken global warming exposer, and we're going to start the show now. Hello? Hello, Vince?
Yeah, Paddy.
I am Vince, yeah, I am.
Lovely, jubbly. Is it after this one?
Pardon?
There's about one left.
One left what?
I just played the last beat of the song.
Okay, you're breaking up on me, sorry.
Okay, you're about to go live. And just type in Skype when you want me to get me in, okay?
Okay, will do. Welcome to the Free Truth Show on tnsradio.ning.com. We are live. My name is Patrick Lynch. I'm your host this evening, and we'll be guiding you through the buffeting waves of the New World Order. And we have a special guest this evening. We have Mr. Piers Corbyn, who is an astrophysicist, an outspoken global warming skeptic and exposer of the global warming scam. He has also produced a technology where he can forecast the weather many years ahead using the sun, and it's very effective. So we'll be speaking to him in a few minutes. We'll take some questions from the chat box. We're going to speak to him for about half an hour. He said he can speak for a half an hour or maybe a little bit more, and then we'll take questions from the chat box. So you can bombard me then, and not before, please. And because Vince has to paste them over. So it's been a funny old week. In my town, I've never seen a fun fair on the beach. There's a massive air show this weekend, and I've seen a Lancaster bomber flying around my house today. And yeah, it's a pretty big show. About 1 million people expected to sort of descend on the beaches of Bournemouth, 7 miles of golden sands. And I'm just wondering, they've been spraying all summer chemtrails, polymers, barium, aluminium, and lots of Morgellons disease kind of stuff. And I'm just wondering if they're gonna actually spray this weekend, whether the Luftwaffe have any orders not to spray the Bournemouth area, because we got a lot of people coming and it's a lot of money, or it could be an ideal opportunity for the New World Order to give everybody a nice little double dose of chemtrails while they're all wriggling around on the beach. You see, the useless eaters we are. So anyway, it'll be a nice weekend, I'm sure. I'm going to give a brief introduction for Piers Corbyn before we get him online here. Piers Corbyn is an astrophysicist. He is the originator of a revolutionary and highly successful solar weather technique, SWT, of long-range forecasting, and founder of Weather Action Long-Range Forecasters. You can see his website at weatheraction.com. He totally rejects the CO2-based theory of global warming and climate change, and has shown that existing published scientific researches demonstrate there is no evidence for the CO2-based theory, only evidence against. Recently, he, along with other scientists, have directly challenged the United Nations Climate Committee, the IPCC, to admit that the CO2-centered theory has failed. This is one of his letters that he wrote to the newspapers. Sirs, the King's North Power Station judgment whereby criminal damage to energy infrastructure is legitimised in the name of campaigning against climate change must be subject to retrial or appeal, which can expose the falsity of the new green religion on which the judgment relies. The decision is a victory for brainwashing for the baseless ideology that every notable weather event is presented as driven by man-made CO2 global warming and consequent climate change. Excuse me. Whatever seemed apparent 10 years ago, the facts are world temperatures have been falling for 10 years while CO2 is rapidly rising. The Arctic was more melted than present from 10,000 to 1,000 years ago, when there was much less CO2, and there is no evidence that CO2 does or ever will drive temperatures or climate. Indeed, the relation is no more the other way round. Oil companies check their websites, and governments love global warming hysteria because it enables them to profit from rising energy prices, carbon fixing, trading and green taxes. The problem now is that daily brainwashing by media and experts on the green gravy train is so much past a tipping point that action from green zealots threatens law and order and energy infrastructure. In July, an international group of 13 independent scientists wrote to the UN Climate Committee IPCC asking for evidence that CO2 drives world temperatures and climate. They have also ignored, just as Tim Yeo MP, chair of the Commons Environment Audit Committee, is also unable to answer the question. Open government is now sacrificed to the new green religion. To help readers prepare for the next deluge of climate hype, note that Britain and Ireland will suffer a series of major damaging deluges and floods during the period 15th to the 28th of September, and these were forecast by Weather Action using solar activity 7 months ago. Green zealots will doubtless claim these events confirm their beliefs, but will pause to ask how many more very wet summers, these are not in the script, must we suffer before the truth emerges. It's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Piers Corbyn to the Free Truth Show. How are you, sir? Are you with us? He will be now.
Good action.
Hello, Mr. Corbyn. Welcome to the Free Truth Show.
Hi. Greetings.
Greetings indeed. I've just read out your letter, actually, your letter to the newspapers. You don't.
Okay.
You certainly don't. You don't hold back at all with your views. I saw you on RT television, and
Yeah.
that's actually the first time. I must admit, I am sorry, but that's actually the first time I saw you. But I thought, who is this guy?
That's okay.
You know, this man needs to be the Prime Minister. You know, Mr. Common Sense. Mr. Common Sense. Now you're an astrophysicist. You've been.
That's correct. I am.
You're an astrophysicist, and your work, I've been checking it out, and the website weatheraction.com. It's superb work you've been doing. At not only with your own work with forecasting, which is excellent. You forecast the weather many years ahead, and apparently we've always been able to do that. But you've also been on the trail of these carbon criminals for a long time. My first question, actually, you asked. I was watching your part of your conference in London there, and you asked a number of these organisations to come to your conference at Imperial College London to give
That's right.
to give scientific observational evidence that CO2 drives temperatures and climate. Well, you had to show the audience the empty chair. I thought that was a nice touch. And you asked on TV. You asked Greenpeace and the campaign against climate change, and nobody has come. And they claim that they want debate. So they didn't show.
Mm. Well, of course, yes, they wouldn't show, would they? Because they haven't actually got anything to say. All they want to do, when they talk about debate, what they mean is they want to have audiences to scare. And we actually do want scientific debate. We invite them to our events, but they do not invite us to their events. The problem they have, of course, is there's no scientific evidence for what they claim. If you look at all the historical records over the last 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 600 million years, you see that there's no evidence that carbon dioxide causes anything.
Right.
What in fact happens is that on occasions, especially when it gets warmer after an ice age, the temperatures control the carbon dioxide levels because they can control the sea surface temperatures, and when the sea is warmed up, it won't absorb carbon dioxide so well. In fact, it emits it.
Well, you've mentioned yourself that the CO2 theory is wrong because it fails and the facts do not agree. You also spoke about a figure from history, John Harrison, and I thought you made an interesting comparison. You made an excellent comparison to his situation then. He was measuring longitude. Is the situation worse now for a scientist to get recognition by telling the truth?
Well, I think in some respects it is worse, yes, because the government industrial international complex is so much more powerful. I mean, John Harrison was really subjected to three forces. One was what the scientists thought, the other was what the Navy thought, and the third was what Parliament thought. And Parliament and the Navy left things to the scientists, more or less, who just wanted to make Harrison shut up because he was upsetting their little nest.
Right.
And things only changed when the Navy stepped in and said, look, Harrison is saving lives. We can't go on losing people, killing them, having them killed in storms because we don't have equipment to navigate when Harrison could provide it. And it was that which changed things, and then Parliament listened and told the Royal Society to shut up. No, I don't think anything will happen similarly now until, unfortunately, more people are killed by weather events, some of which could be predicted and which the standard meteorologist will not acknowledge. I mean, for example, a number of people died in road accidents in England and all over Europe last winter because the authorities ran out of road salt. They ran out of road salt because of the Met Office's stupid global warming forecast, which said we'd have a mild winter. And of course, there's things like what happened in Russia and Pakistan. Now, we didn't predict the Pakistan floods, but such things are possible. And if the United Nations seriously want to save lives, they should make use of our science. However, they don't. They're not interested. There's going to be a meeting in Boulder this week of so-called climate scientists who are busy meeting to try and work out how to forecast things. Now, we were not invited to this. They know they can't forecast things.
So you have you're on record as being probably the most accurate weather forecaster on the planet.
Well, in terms of long range, yes.
Right. And you'd think that you're the sort of person that they'd be most interested to be included in that conference, but they haven't even approached you?
No, they haven't even approached us.
Have you offered your services to them?
We could do. I think it's probably over now or well underway. But yes, I mean, I'm easy to find. If they wanted me to come, they could have asked. I would be happy to offer publicly here and now if there's any of them listening, but I don't expect there are any listening. It seemed to have been an event stitched up between the leading global warming authorities. It's not a public event. It's they decided to meet each other, you see.
Yeah.
But of course, you're right. If they are serious about wanting to reduce hardship from floods and drought and so forth and save lives, they should involve us.
The whole climate, if you'll forgive the pun, of the politics and the media, all working together to espouse their theories about global warming, which they've had to backpedal on a little bit, and I will come to ClimateGate. I will get to that.
Yeah.
But the whole environment is so corrupt and so deceptive. When I speak to people in the pub and say that global warming is a lie, a big scam to get more money off you, I was chased around the pub one night. But people don't get it. They don't, and you can't blame them with the amount of mind control from the television, the BBC. I mean, can you give an example in history where science has been so utterly corrupted as now?
No, I don't think I can. I mean, obviously in single countries it was corrupted by Stalin. You know, they imposed certain theories and scientists didn't agree, got into very grave trouble, and also by Hitler, who again, you know, concocted theories of the master race and so forth, and scientists who didn't agree, well, got into very serious trouble. Now, but those were only in single countries. Now we have a worldwide phenomena where nearly all governments and the United Nations are in this together in order to promote carbon trading and create a bubble of false value, which they imagine might save the current economic situation. And the tragedy is that the developing world go along with this in order to accept begging bowl handouts from the West. When, of course, the whole thing is designed to control the developing world and make the developing world rely on Western technology, high-tech solutions to any problem they care to either find or create, and so forth. So the bubble of false value is created around that. No, I don't think it'll work. I think the developing world will, when the chips are down, they're going to say, well, we're not going to spend 3 times as much as you on having electricity in Africa, because you want us to have wind farms which won't work or solar power which costs 3 times as much. I think they will say no. However, of course, because of the way the Western investment operates, that means the development of Africa will take longer. Now, I support the electrification of Africa, whereas Greenpeace and the like, whatever they say, in reality, they don't care a damn about the living standards of people in Africa.
Well, they were infiltrated long ago. The Lord Monckton himself had to leave because he understood very well what was happening. I mean, the Club of Rome got together about 30 years ago, decided how can we get as much money off the slaves as possible. We need to invent, and they physically got together and invented a global warming. Will say that the very air we breathe is a poison, and they must have had a good laugh. And the only companies that are going to be allowed to pollute the planet will be their own special companies, their own special banking Illuminati, black nobility corporations. I mean, all you have to do is look at BP at the moment. So this scam was a premeditated genocide. Would you agree?
Well, I would say so, yes. Because, well, 2 things on that. One is the oil companies. They're painted by Greenpeace as being the enemy, but actually they're part of the game, because they gain massively when energy prices go up. All of a sudden shale oil or whatever, difficult to extract oil, becomes valuable, so their asset values escalate, and they can therefore borrow money, and the profits go up as long as the price goes up. And I mean, that is a very significant factor, yes.
Well, Al Gore has been paraded throughout the planet as the all-seeing prophet and saviour of the global warming industry, and as David Bellamy, your colleague, so wonderfully pointed out, that indeed it is an industry. And the title of Gore's film was An Inconvenient Truth. Well, the people seeking the truth are in most cases trying to get the truth out to the public. They are an inconvenience to his carbon scam. I mean, Al Gore said that the science is settled. Is it?
Well, I would say anyone in history who says science is settled are trying to hide something. I mean, the Royal Society said to Harrison science was settled and that everything Newton said was right, and what anybody else said later was just not to be relied on, you see. all major scientific understandings and developments have been preceded by people saying that their existing understandings were settled. I mean, that happened when Einstein came along with his theories, and when Niels Bohr came along with theories of the atom, or when people came along with theories of continental drift. I mean, it took 10 years to get the theories of continental drift established. I mean, we've already been going 30 years or at least 20 years on this complete nonsense. So this is a harder number. But, you know, it will be defeated in the end. I hope, I believe.
So just, I like to play a game with guests when they first come on to the show. We have Bob Chapman coming on, we have Michael Tsarian coming on, and David Icke has been on a radio station with Vince, TNS Radio with Vince, and I like to play a game with the listeners and the guests, and I like to say, for anyone who's just listening for the first time, they've just got home from some stifling office job where they've got mercury-filled lights giving them migraines and cancer all day, and they've got home and they just happen to flick through the net and they find us, and they believe that global warming is real right up to now, and suddenly an astrophysicist is on the radio saying that everything this chap is watching on the television is a lie. What would you say to someone if you're sitting on a park bench having your lunch and they tut at the headline, "Oh, global warming, we're all going to die in 50 years if we don't do something now," and he tuts? What would you say to that man on the bench?
Well, I usually say, well, do you think this has happened before? And they say, oh, no, it couldn't have, it's new. I said, well, actually, it has. It's all happened before. And, you know, any example they have.
The medieval warm period, yeah.
Yeah, usually they say things like the hottest, coldest, whatever it is, for 100 years. And then I say, well, okay, it could be, but what happened 100 years ago? What caused it 100 years ago? And then they have a problem. And of course, these things are all natural. And in reality, the world is not actually warming now. Even under the fiddle data, it's not warming. But it's also not the case there's more extremes. There's certainly more reporters of extreme events because we have, massive media that we never had before. But there's no evidence for their claims at all. And then, well, people get a bit excited and shocked and then say, yeah, but surely it's all good anyway that we're reducing waste and so on. And I say, well, if you want to reduce waste, you reduce waste, but you don't need to be told lies to do this. If someone's telling you lies, they must have another motive.
Well, I feel...
And then,
Sorry.
People talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. And people talk?
Yeah, it's usually, yeah.
Well, I mean, people talk and they exchange ideas, and once they've heard a sample of the truth, they ought to be interested in finding out a bit more about it. So with the rise of the internet, and they are trying to slam down on it quite harsh with Obama's kill switch, we do have the facilities at the moment, and we've got to fight to keep them. It's free speech after all. We do have the facilities to spread the word and be a counter to the mass media mind manipulation. That in itself, you may agree, is a science. The actual mind control and the lies on the BBC.
Well, yeah, we have a worldwide brainwashing machine now.
Right.
But it has holes in it because of the internet. But one dreads to think of what happened in Russia and what happened in Hitler's Germany. People went along with that stuff because they didn't know anything else.
Yeah. Well, the propaganda machine of Goebbels was unprecedented.
Remember that? Hitler was elected. I mean, that is a stunning thing, isn't it? People were brainwashed by lies upon lies. And that is happening now. But there are increasingly people seeing through it. I mean, the opinion polls all show that things are moving in the direction of climate realism.
Climate realism. I like the sound of that.
Yes. Well, I call myself a climate realist because a skeptic, well, I'm not, obviously I'm totally skeptical of what they say, but the point is climate always has been changing, so, we have a realistic view of the world.
Speaking of World War II, I've I've seen a few. I've seen a couple of Lancaster bombers flying around my house today. There's an air show, and I was telling
Oh wow!
I was telling my nephew. It was great to hear the Merlin engines screaming. Beautiful song. I was telling my nephew that these chaps went over to Germany when they were bombing in London with the Blitz. These chaps went over there and they were very brave, and many died, and And I was just thinking, well, they're actually flying around in the middle of chemtrails at the moment, and the war is on humanity now. The war is on people. If people are expecting, are worried about a third world war, we're in it. So I mean, coming back to what you were saying about being a climate realist. I mean, they use and I'm trying to tie this in with World War Two. After World War Two, if anyone even doubted any small detail of the Holocaust, which actually in Yiddish means burnt sacrifice, they only had to douse them with the denialist, with the Holocaust denialist claim. Now they're doing that to anyone who says that global warming is not real. They're saying they're denialist. They're using that very, very subtle psychological language.
Yeah.
Do you get that?
Plain language, and it's very dangerous. Very dangerous. I confronted George Monbiot with exactly this point after that Guardian debate.
George Monbiot is an absolute monster and a disgrace to science and humanity in general.
Well, I agree with you, absolutely. But anyway, I confronted him.
Psychopath. Absolute psychopath. You only have to look at his eyes and you know that man is lying and he's desperate and he's greedy.
That's true.
He's a scumbag. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but
he said, no problem. I said, look, you're accusing me of climate change denial, but I don't deny any climate change. It's always been changing. So why do you use this pejorative term? And he said, well, you're denying man-made climate change, aren't you? And I said, well, of course I am. He said, well, that's all we mean by it. I said, well, that isn't what the public understand by it. You don't need to use such a phrase.
Oh, well.
So, here we are.
Well, the public are supposed to just drink the fluoride and shut up and believe everything that's on the television, be a good slave, pay your taxes and die like good little slaves. That's it. I mean, George Monbiot is just the epitome of everything that's wrong with England. I mean, he's probably not even English. He's probably gets his copy of the Socialist Worker every week.
I don't know where he's from. Yeah.
Well, he's from Planet Pop Tart. That's where he's from. Sorry. I'll try and stay on subject. Science has generally been held back in history. I mean, new technologies we know are 50 to 80 years old. On Normandy Beach, you can see one of the guys with a mobile phone boasting to his friends, saying, "You're never going to guess how this is being transmitted back to the US." And they're 50, 80 years ahead in actuality, but as they are mainly sort of military based, the public is not able to use it. I think primarily of Tesla when I think of repressed technology.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from the observational data collected by yourselves, is there any kind of super duper technologies that will shut up the eco-fascists once and for all that you can get hold of?
No, I don't. Not to my knowledge, but there may be many things out there which are hidden. You see, most physics and science funding is from the military, so we don't quite know what they're getting up to, or even if they know some of the things that I've been finding out. So I don't think they do, because there's obviously great surprise when we do make forecasts. But I would urge people obviously to have a look on our website at what we know so far, and the things we're doing will result eventually in a paradigm shift, if you like, a change of ideas in the way the sun and the world's weather operate and interact. Because in principle, it will be possible to make long-range predictions, many weeks ahead with the accuracy of current one-day-ahead forecasts, and to also forecast extreme events years ahead in principle for anywhere in the world.
And your website, if should people choose to check you out, and I recommend this website. It's some excellent forecasts on there, long range and short range, and it gives an overall view if you need more information about the global warming fraud. It's weatheraction.com, weatheraction.com. You are listening to...
That's right. And
sorry, I was just going to say, you are listening to the Free Truth Show, for those watching on YouTube later, and we're talking to Piers Corbyn from weatheraction.com, an astrophysicist. You've done quite a bit of work into predicting the forecasts, and you use solar weather technique.
that's right.
Can you tell us...
We've developed beyond that a bit now. We now use solar lunar action technique because we involve the moon more, and we have a better understanding of the predictability of certain solar events. But you're right. On the website it was first called solar weather technique.
And can you give, in layman's terms, I'm sure you hate that being a scientist, but can you give us in layman terms how your technique works?
Sure, yes. And I would recommend on this, go to the website and have a look at some of the links under the news section. Yeah, and anyone can trawl through that, and you get PDFs of presentations, for example. Now, the essential idea is that the world weather state, that is, what is the jet stream and so forth, everything doing, is controlled essentially by outside influences, namely the rush of magnetic particles from the sun, and how these are modulated by the position of the moon. So that means, therefore, that if we can understand what the sun did in the past, and we know what the moon was doing, if we understand those two things together, we can work out in future when there was a similar situation of the solar magnetic activity and the moon's modulation and a number of other things in the stratosphere and so forth. But we can generate, if you like, a way of describing the past, and when we find out when in the future that past came around again, or more or less came around again, we then say, okay, the weather that happened in the past will happen again. And that is the basis of our extreme events forecasts, and also our more general seasonal things.
I have a question. Sorry, carry on, please.
So essentially, in the most recent events, we predicted that the jet stream would first of all be causing this heat in Russia, and then between the 15th and 19th, but especially the 14th or the 15th and 16th, there would be massive events on the sun, and that would shift the jet stream, end the Russian heat wave, and end the super deluges in Pakistan. Now, all those things happened, and what particularly happened on the sun was there was a two sunspot solar flare, which is quite unusual, and then there was a sudden ionospheric disturbance. And following that, as the ionosphere of Earth was upset, following that, there was the changes we predicted. So, the essential point is everything that's happened, will happen in the weather, has happened before, and we can identify when the same or similar forcing factors took place, and therefore make a forecast if we have the past data. Now, it's not clockwork, because nothing in the past is ever exactly the same as something will happen in the future, but it gives a good idea, and it also means that you can have seasonal effects which will tend to repeat in 132-year steps. So, for example, 132 years ago or so, 2005, 6 and 7, there were massive floods in the summer in England, and these were repeated we've had those 2005, 6 and 7, 132 years before. um, 1875, 1876 and 1877, we also had floods in England. Now, it doesn't mean that there's a one-to-one correspondence, but certainly it looks like there's major meanderings of the jet stream happened then and are happening now.
John P. Holdren is the White House Science Czar, the current
Yep.
White House Science Czar. I'm sure you know of him.
Yes.
He's admitted that there are tests to manipulate the weather. He admits they are geoengineering the planet, and we found, me and Turtle actually, Walking Turtle, we found a correlation between increased HAARP activity and the earthquakes in Haiti and Chile. The graphs I've seen from HAARP's own website show a distinct correlation. The former US Defense Secretary Cohen is on record that they have tectonic weaponry. How difficult must it be for a man in your field not to enter these experiments into your equations?
Well, of course, yeah, I mean, what you say is pretty dramatic, and I'm sure, well, the military will try anything, so I'm prepared to believe something is happening. Now, whether they actually can control the weather, I don't know. You see, I do have a puzzle to an extent, because we predict certain things, and they do happen. Now, there are also some things that happen which we didn't predict. Now, whether we make mistakes, you can say, well, HAARP was triggering something, I don't know, but that is certainly something to look at. But I would say there must be a limit to what they can achieve, because the energy of the sun and the solar wind is astounding. I would think if they're going to get these things to work, they would need to choose the times when the sun was also doing something pretty dramatic and kind of add to it and tip the effect in a certain way.
I see, yeah, like a slingshot.
Yeah. Now, it may be that they know more than they're letting on, and that they want to divert people away from studying these things or even believing in them, because they don't want anyone to get onto their case, and that's why the authorities go around promoting global warming nonsense, and that man's little pittance of CO2 is driving things, which of course is an absurdity. But if people believe that, they're never going to believe that the military are trying to control the weather.
Well, they might believe 30,000 top scientists that have spoken out against the findings of the 300 UN scientists who, a lot of them were fired, you know. Have you come under any pressure yourself? I mean, how have you kept your job, Mr. Corbyn?
Well, I run my own business, that's why, but I have friends in academia who advise, well, I make it very clear that there's no way I could get a job under the current situation. Even though I am qualified to lecture in physics and maths, and they need lecturers in physics and maths. I am saying to some leading universities, because they do talk to me, that really some of them are going to have to get ahead of the game sometime and actually declare that the CO2 theory is nonsense. And if they did, they would suddenly get masses of students coming towards them, and they could lead the world in changing the paradigm of meteorology, climate science, and the relationship with astrophysics. So somebody somewhere is going to, jump to that at some point. But the question is when.
Presumably the idea is that when you're a young buck of a teenage astrophysicist or any kind of scientist, you want to be right in the middle of the cut and thrust of the vanguard of science and technology. You want to be right on the tip. Now, the moment you get to university and you've had 16 years of indoctrination already, by the time you get to university, you must be a shell. Unless you're a very strong character, you're just thinking of your people, your kids. You've got to eat yourself and your life, and then by that time the indoctrination is complete. So but there are many scientists coming through. I mean, when you speak to the students today or young people interested in your subject or similar subjects, do you find there's less of a fire in them these days? Less students?
Well, it's
See what I'm getting
varies.
at?
I mean, I go back to
Is there hope
Imperial
for the
College quite a
future?
lot.
Is there hope for the future? That's what I'm saying in the
Oh, I think there is
scientific
hope for the
community.
future, yeah. I mean, just by the fact that Imperial College Student Union do invite me to speak at dinners and so forth, even though they know my views are diametrically opposed to those of the powers that be.
Excellent.
So, you know, it is good, but it is a hard nut to crack. And I think it's quite interesting how student funding today prevents them, makes it more difficult for them to think, because they have to, you know, earn their own keep, basically, while at university, or borrow money and get out of a huge debt.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a student, we lived in relative luxury. We had grants to keep us alive, feed us, clothe us, and all our university fees were paid, you know, and we were more free to think, you know, and that was the, I don't know, the pinnacle of, you know, free academia, if you like, in the 60s, but that has ended.
Well, getting back to the corruption in the science community, which I'm sure you're aware of. We know about the ClimateGate scandal.
Yeah.
It wasn't made a big deal of on the news, of course, in the mainstream
No.
mind control, mass manipulation media, but thousands and thousands of emails were hacked by, we believe, perhaps Russia. I mean, Alex Jones was popping champagne on the show. He never does that. He hasn't done that in 15 years. I had to watch that again today, I must say.
Yeah.
You gotta love that guy, you know.
Oh, he's brilliant. He's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I listen to him every day, and he was loving the ClimateGate. Can you give us some idea what that was all about? I mean, they faked the buoy data on the Arctic, Pacific, and the Atlantic temperatures, didn't they? And then the university had to admit that it was. They got caught red-handed, didn't they?
Well, basically, there were two things going on. The actual hiding of a decline was that they'd made a model to make use of data to get rid of the medieval warm period. And then they found that if they used that applying to later, it just made temperatures dive to insanely low amounts. So they had to hide that decline by sort of fudging the join with current data. So that was that decline they did. Then, of course, they wanted to increase temperatures and hide the more recent decline, a real decline in temperatures, and they did that. This wasn't the climate research in the East Anglia who did the first one. The second one was kind of more like a world thing involving American operations too. They just selected data from countries. So when Russia sent them some data, they decided to ignore 75% of their stations and just choose the ones which showed some sort of warming. Or in New Zealand, they fiddled around with the data to change a warming of 0.3 degrees per century or something into one of 0.7, which is just, well, it was fraud. Fraud is the right word. And now we find that with what's called satellite gate, a number of the American satellites were recording insane temperatures, such as, which would mean that Lake Michigan should have been boiling continuously for the last year. Those averages were put in, or those temperatures are put into the data to construct climate averages. Well, I mean, this is insane, you know. I mean, if I were to put in temperatures of minus 50 and say, oh, this is the answer, stick this into the average, and, you know, there would be front page news and people screaming from the rooftops on the media that people have been fraudulating data to make the world colder. But if it's fraud to make it hotter, somehow I don't hear anything of it. And, you know, what it means is that we actually have no reliable data set which tells us what world temperatures are really doing now. We don't even know with any reliability whether the warming peak that seems to have passed now was warmer or cooler than the peak which past data and records of, actual snow or whatever, or summers, show was in the 1930s and 40s, you see. Was that peak of world warmth bigger or lower than the recent peak? We don't know.
Well, you spoke of, I noticed you mentioned Russia there, and there's an article that's come out today from Free Europe Liberty. It's a pretty good website. Russian scholar warns of secret US climate change weapon. As Muscovites suffer record high temperatures this summer, a Russian political scientist has claimed the United States may be using climate change weapons to alter the temperatures and crop yields of Russia and other Central Asian countries. In a recent article, Andrei Arashev, Director Deputy of the Strategic Culture Foundation, wrote, "At the moment, climate weapons may be reaching their target capacity and may be used to provoke droughts, erase crops, and induce anomalous phenomena in certain countries." You don't mind me holding you to this and picking you up on it, but you don't seem to it doesn't seem to warrant enough interest in you to look any further into it. I mean,
oh no, we should look further into that, but it's a question of time. You see, well, it could be that is going on. You see, now they can see like we can see. Well, we predicted there would be a blocking system, and it would be hot in East Europe and Russia. Now, they could see that, or certainly they could see it happening anyway, even if they couldn't predict it. Now, if that is happening, and they have the facility to make something worse, then that would be the time to make it worse. So, I mean, it's not really stupid that they could be doing something. However, I don't think they would be able to prevent the natural events, which you can see they did happen on the sun, which have swept that superheat away. But if it could be that technology has been or could be developed to make real events turn out worse.
there is one question about the sun actually from Walking Turtle. She's an American Indian in Kansas, and a herbalist.
Oh, right.
And she does the Saturday night show actually. She says, I have heard on the one hand that the sun is becoming more active, and on the other hand the sun is becoming less active. Which is it, please?
Right. Well, it goes in 11-year cycles of activity, or
Right.
22-year cycles of magnetic activity, because the sunspots are differently magnetised each cycle. So right now we are actually in an increasingly active period, although we've just gone out of a long minimum. So in the long term, people are saying, well, some astrophysicists are saying, well, the general average of the cycles is probably declining. And they base that on the fact we just had a very long minimum of activity. But in the shorter term, like the next 5 years, there will be an increase in activity.
So from your research, from
Or
your gatherings and findings, you're absolutely positive that it's the sun driving the climate and not some wacky CO2 poisonous gas theory, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense to me.
Impact at all, because you see, whatever impact there could be from CO2, it's entirely negated by feedback processes, such as whatever happens in the atmosphere between us and the top of the atmosphere. That's one thing. The other thing is the plants. When you have when there's more CO2, plants grow faster and they do more transpiration, and the transpiration is a cooling process. So more CO2 is more cooling of the surface, and if there's also a warming effect from anything, either incorrect or correct science from the CO2, they will all be completely negated, because if there's not enough plants to negate any CO2 effect, direct effect, then of course the world gets warmer and the plants grow faster. So there is a total feedback system which negates any CO2 change, any changes in climate caused by changes in CO2 levels.
Well, that hopefully that clears it up for Walking Turtle.
Yeah. Okay.
We do actually have Lord Monckton coming on around about the 10th of September. It's a provisional date at the moment.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So I was actually hoping to have a global warming kind of theme this evening, or anti-global warming theme.
Okay.
I was going to either get Godfrey Bloom on or Lord Monckton to speak after you, but they weren't available, and it was a bit short notice anyway. So I'm going to be reading out lots of articles later on about some of the new articles that are out exposing the fraud.
Fantastic. Yes, this satellite gate is a very big fraud, and they are very embarrassed by it and want to pretend it hasn't happened. But
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to hammer away at that. You see, what we have is a global warming religion,
Yeah.
and it has to be destroyed.
Well, the reason I mentioned, actually, I was going to come to that about satellite gate. Well, I've been trying to find the roots of this problem, and it's very clear from some of the real experts like Alan Watt and Alex Jones, and the massive amount of research they do, and that inspires me to do my own research. And
Yes.
for me, it all goes back to the Rothschilds. But we're looking today. Actually, let me just start again. About 8 months ago, I heard a speech from Rothschild expounding the wonderful idea that we could have a green conservation bank. Those exact 3 words. When I was listening to Chris Huhne, the climate secretary or something, he was speaking in Parliament, and just in the middle of all these measures that were coming out for the future, he just slipped in 3 little words: green conservation bank, and then moved on to the next subject. I was like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Now the whole idea, as we know,
well, themselves say we're all in this together, but they don't need us; they need them.
Well, the way it works, the way it's going to work, Mr. Corbyn, is in the future we're going to pay all our taxes to a privately owned offshore bank, a green conservation bank, and that will be the one world Gaia bank, you know. So the politicians are in on it. The media is in on it. We're not conspiracy theorists anymore. It's not even an insult. It's not even a debate. The New World Order is real, and they actually have a plan to eliminate 80 to 90% of us, so they can have a nice green Earth. But left in their hands, it's going to be a black Earth. So it's important. It's important that we get as much information out there to people as possible. And I'm so glad that you're able to come on to chat to us today to clear that up. You're a voice of common sense in the wilderness, Mr. Corbyn.
Thanks very much. Excellent. Yeah. Well, we have to keep on the fight, and anyone who hears this, I hope they'll spread it around and get on our website, and also make use of our forecasts and force the authorities to make use of them to save people from suffering and save lives around the world.
Well, the satellite gate saga is new to me. I'm just taking a quote here from your site. The climate hype industry will do everything in its power to put a lid on this one. Imagine if it were found the satellite data had been reading minus 200 Fahrenheit in Michigan, etc. You mentioned about the boiling lake, and that had been used in input for world averages. There would be front page news and enraged questions in every elected and unelected public forum in the world, coupled with public sackings of the scientists involved and the most dire end of the world warnings possible, and redoubled calls for carbon super taxes. So some of the top climate scientists are speaking out on this satellite gate scandal. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yes. Well, what is become apparent is that the data as used by the American government, it has been inaccurate and has been inaccurate for some years. Now, the scandal is that they must have known this and carried on using it. And which means those people in charge of that data are frankly suspect. And we have to do all we can to defend those who've unearthed this. And and got it out in the open.
Someone's just asking what your website is there. Grace Young Monaghan, the question is, what's his website, Patrick? It's weatheraction.com. Weatheraction.com. Piers
That's it.
Corbyn. I'll just type that in there for the people. There was one other thing I wanted to go over, just very quickly. How are we doing for time, Mr. Corbyn? You've been very generous with your time.
I don't know, we're okay. It's 5 to 10. I'm not sure when you were going to finish. But
Well, we actually finish at 11, so whenever you get a bit too tired,
carry on for another quarter of an hour. So,
oh, that's great. Thanks ever so much.
Like.
That's great. I mean, your letter to the newspapers was very, very open, and you sent that to the Telegraph and the Guardian. Presumably, you got no reply, or they didn't print any of it.
No. Well, we sent lots of things. We sent stuff to the British government or various MPs.
Yeah.
And or MPs in charge of their climate committee and so forth. They all ignored us completely, except for Gordon Brown's office, who did reply. No, they did. I mean, I think Gordon Brown got, he had officers who replied. Now, their reply wasn't useful, but at least it was a reply, and what it did, it directed us to the Met Office, who then sent us a lot of rubbish. At least with that, we can argue with them, whereas the chairs of the select committees which were promoting climate change and the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, they didn't even acknowledge anything we sent them, ever. And I think that is scandalous, because they call themselves representative bodies.
Well, representative of who exactly?
Well, indeed.
I'm just going over a few articles here, looking at a few articles that I wanted to bring up with you. I'm having a few problems accessing the questions at the moment, so I'm sorry if I'm missing them. If perhaps Vince could post them into my Skype chat box. I'm having trouble getting on to tnsradio.ning.com to get the questions, so sorry about that. Scottish Sovereign just mentioned that.
Well, I think the question must be, what are people going to do about all this? And what I think they have to do is, whenever any politician turns up anywhere talking green, just ask them for evidence. And if you go past a shop who says, buy from us, save the planet, then boycott that shop. Just make it clear that CO2 is having no effect. I mean, we can, you can recycle what you want, but don't fall for these cons, and make it publicly known that you're not falling for them.
Absolutely, it's a green revolution, masterminded by the Rockefellers and the Club of Rome. So it's a bunch of criminals who believe that the public are well dumbed down now with lots of television information. They hand our culture and our society to us. If there's any public discontent, we'll increase the amount of rock concerts and festivals going on. And our culture is handed to us on a plate. Even the sexual revolution of the 60s was an invention to purely break up the family, so people are used to sleeping around and they bond with each other. It sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? But it does keep the population down. And this is the whole agenda.
Well, they do have a hidden agenda of reducing world population, because I've been to meetings of them. There was a big meeting in the Royal Society, and I stood up and argued with them pretty forthrightly, me and 2 other scientists. And then they had a discussion at the end, and I think they forgot we were there.
Right.
And they started.
Oh, it's always worth hanging around for the end. Yeah, I know.
They started going on about population control, and said there was twice as many people in the world as there should be. Now,
for them,
they didn't then say, well, half the people in the room have got to die. They were obviously excluding themselves. But what they had in mind, I do not know, but frankly, it was very scary. and I think it's worth thinking about the prospect of the world, because if you just look at the potential of the sea, where man so far just is a nomad in the sea and just fishes a bit, compared with the land, 500,000 years ago, where man was just a nomad. Of course, the land has now increased in productivity 1,000-fold, and the sea could do the same if it was developed properly. So, there's not actually a sort of shortage of resources here if man puts his mind to it.
And that was at the Royal Society, like the Fabian Society.
Yeah, and it was creepy stuff.
Yeah, like the Fabian Society. I mean, Alex Jones has said quite often that if you sneak into these meetings and just hang around to the end, they get standing ovations. And if they say they want to kill everybody, they get standing ovations even more.
Yeah.
When exactly was this meeting at the Royal Society?
It was March. February this year. As far as I remember. Yes, it was they have a thing every year of the main organisations involved in climate change and CO2 promotion. But it's a public thing, so you can go in there. And we got in there and made our points, and had some pretty vociferous attacks on us personally. I don't mean physical, but they were getting close to it. In the breaks, where they just said we weren't scientists and so on. However, that's we were scientists, so they had a few problems there.
You don't happen to remember who was presenting the talks on depopulation?
All the names, but not in front of me. I can't remember them. But if you look up Royal Society,
there'll be a list of attendees.
Royal Society Climate Change Conference 2010. You'll find it in there.
Now there's a question here from Vince. Can you ask Piers if he knows of Nassim Haramein, the Resonance Project physicist?
That rings a bell. So the answer is yes, but I can't remember what I should remember about this.
Yeah, the resonance.
What sort of resonance was this about?
That's the title. The Resonance Project.
I'll have a look. But anyone who writes in or whatever, we do eventually respond.
He mentioned it was the geometry of space. Yeah, he's mentioning here that it was the geometry of space. He's an upcoming guest on Monday. You see. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Well, we'll have a look in that, but I think that's probably. It's an enlargement of the topic we're talking about, but quite a big enlargement. Nothing wrong with that.
The BBC 2 Climate Wars documentary. You've been quite an outspoken critic of that particular production. We know that the BBC is complicit in the official line being that global warming is real and we all got to sacrifice ourselves on the altar of Gaia, and to me it's all about taking as much money off people as possible, deindustrializing the West and getting everybody back to living like a serf globally. That is the agenda. If you live in the country, you won't. You're going to all be crammed into cities, and if you happen to die in sick kind of post-Victorian conditions, then all the better, it seems. But for me, would you regard the BBC as complicit in fraud, given that every newscaster promotes global warming?
I would, yeah. The BBC is complicit in fraud. In fact, I knew someone who used to work for the BBC that said, well, there'd been some meetings where they just said straight out that climate skeptics, or realists as we call ourselves, shouldn't be allowed to say. They already have too much say.
Right.
He said to me that if this was a remark about politicians, then those who said that would be sacked immediately. If they suddenly decided one political party, like the Liberal Democrats, had too much say, therefore don't let them speak anymore. That would not be allowed. So he said it was an utter scandal that this is being said. But in practical terms, you're right, that is what they do. They report on warming, they don't report on cold events. For example, right now, in the last month, there's been super cold events in Peru, Bolivia, Australia. Hardly a beep is reported. Although it's been very hot in West Russia, it's actually been very cold in Siberia, above 80 degrees north. That hasn't been reported. So they slant everything to make it look like the world is warming, and they arrange news articles to brainwash people. Like they'll report a bit of heating somewhere, and then they'll have a story about the need to control CO2 and climate change. They won't link them together directly, but in people's minds, of course, they are intrinsically linked. It's a standard brainwashing process. And they have to be called to account. They must be called to account.
James Dellingpole wrote in the Spectator recently, the anthropogenic global warming scare is not about science and never was, as ClimateGate proved, but as some of us suspected long before. AGW is the invention of a cabal of activists all working towards more or less the same eco-fascist agenda. Mother Gaia is suffering, it's mostly our fault. The only way to atone for our sins is to destroy Western industrial civilization and shackle ourselves with a form of one world government run by experts and bureaucrats over whom we have no democratic control.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's a battle.
That's true. That's true. He's right.
He's a good young man.
And of course, a lot of people on board of this, they don't realise what they're buying into. I mean, I've got various colleagues who are, in this climate change industry, and they think they're saving the planet. But of course, there is a hidden agenda, and as you point out, it's political. It's not scientific.
I mean, the carbon taxes, once they're spread out, if they're allowed to be spread out, I mean, the ClimateGate scandal was absolutely devastating. No wonder Alex Jones was popping champagne. And it was actually devastating. I mean, it turned out that they were faking the buoy data on the Arctic and the Atlantic temperatures. And they were caught red-handed, really. I mean, the head of the UN climate program said, "This is a way we can shut down human industrial capacity so we can control everybody." And that's the head of the UN climate program saying that. Phil Jones, and this is actually what he said. He had a graph showing climate statistics over the last millennium. He alluded to a technique used by fellow scientists to, and I quote, "hide the decline."
That's right. That's right. It's a monstrosity.
But you see hope in the younger generation that they can get some decent kind of education, at least on the internet.
Well, I think the internet is very important, and people have to spread the word around. But somehow we have to make it so that people, have it in their interest to make sure that science and policies are accountable. I mean, it is in their interest, but you have to get the word through to people.
Well,
but you're helping do that.
Well, it's important. Yeah, it's important. Well, I'm going to bid you farewell, Mr. Corbyn. I want to thank you very much for coming onto the show and sharing your thoughts and your views with us and your work. People can check out your website at weatheraction.com. Weatheraction.com. That's www, weatheraction.com. And have a great day tomorrow and sleep well tonight. And would you be interested in coming back to chat to us again sometime in the future?
Sure, anytime. Yes.
Well, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me, and good luck to all listeners. And carry on being objective, and don't let people trick you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corbyn. Good night.
Okay, all the best. Bye.
Bye bye. That was Piers Corbyn, astrophysicist and outspoken global warming, climate change realist, should we say. And top guy. And if you ever get a chance to check out that RT interview, do so. Here's a tune. We'll be back right after this tune.
Yeah, buddy.
Hello, Vince. How are you?
Wow, that was something else that guy was saying there.
About the depopulation?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's very common. I hear that all the time. Yeah. Shocking.
Mm.
I know they're at it, and they're standing ovations, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll look on that website and check it out.
Oh, strange.
Pardon?
Your signal cleared right up.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Pressure.
It's worked out all right. Yeah.
Have you anyone else coming on?
I don't know. I've got lots of articles to read out though.
Okay.
Yep.
What you want your next song? I want to get down and have a cup of tea.
After this song.
No, when do you want your next song?
Oh, about 22.
Okay. I'm just gonna get a cup of tea and a bit of talk.
All right, Vince. God bless you, man. You're doing a grand job. Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks for all your help.
I just went them. There's 2 minutes to go before the song is finished.
All right, and then you're gonna go for the tea, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, magic.
He was a very interesting guest.
Yes, I wanted to get a bit more sort of scientific with him, but I didn't have the